369 games in my Steam library, and I may have finished 20 of them. It's not because I love wasting money, but more so because I probably put 3,000 plus hours each on AVA, Minecraft, and Halo games. Sorry, you probably don't know what AVA is or was if you are under 20. It was a thing back in the day when gaming PCs looked like this. So yeah, I'm one of those people who obsesses over one thing and keeps doing it until the oceans dry up. That being said, after I was done obsessing over AVA, Halo, and Minecraft, I became more of a casual gamer, especially because it was clear that I couldn't make this YouTuber thing a job of sort. Yeah, it was time to build a real career and stand on my own. For that, I got this tedious thing called a full-time job until I didn't. Essentially, the last 5 years have been very kind to me in terms of income. I did, however, had to work minimum 70 hours per week and had little to no personal time, and thus, I've decided I'm going to give myself a 3 months break before I burn out completely. And so, here I am, with 3 months to try all the games I haven't had the chance to play. I'm going to try them, and I'm simply going to comment on them. There's not going to be any ratings or point system. I'm just going to give you my take on the games. The rule is to play at least 5 hours of each game, preferably 10. It's not a review because in 3 months of time, I couldn't possibly finish all the games I own. Thus, my opinions are going to be first impression and purely personal takes on the games that I play. Hopefully, you'll agree or disagree in the comment section and maybe even change my mind. New games will continue coming since Humble Bundle continues to charge my card every month and Fanatical won't stop enticing me with deals and bundles. Yeah, I discovered those ungodly sites as if Steam sales weren't enough waste of money. Let's see, I've got Amazon Prime, Netflix, Hulu, YouTube Premium, Humble, Costco, and I barely watch Netflix and Hulu. I don't even know why I keep paying for them. In fact, I'm gonna cancel them tonight. But let's look at the bright side. At least with Costco, I get some good deals on potato chips that could feed a family of 4 for a week, and I get to have a chicken bake every couple of weeks. Then with Humble and Fanatical, I get to make videos for the two of you who still watch me. Now, with that long intro out of the way, let's play Banished. Actually, I did have a proper Let's Play all edited out, but the game is so simple that it's better that I do a speedrun on how the game is played instead. So you want to organize the information display panels first, that way you can get a clear understanding of what's what in town. In terms of starter buildings, you get a barn and a stockpile. The storage barn stores finished goods for consumption including hides, foodstuffs, tools, and clothing. The stockpile stores logs, stone, iron, coal, and firewood in its inventory. The first thing I did was to build a house. You have 3 different types of living accommodations. I can choose a wooden house, a stone house, or a boarding house. A boarding house was out of the question because it's disgusting. You have multiple families under the same roof with no walls for privacy, meaning little Timmy and Tammy would have to watch mom and dad. I chose a stone house as a starter home. It's more expensive than a wooden one, but the house pays for itself in the long run since it burns less firewood in the winter due to better insulation. Also, you can't upgrade a wooden house into a stone house. You do the upgrade the old-fashioned way, demolish it first, get a little bit of resources back, then build a stone house. After that, you want to get started on building food production buildings. You start out with a gatherer's hut, which will yield roots, berries, mushrooms, and onions. This building gives you the best bang for the buck in the beginning. As you lay down the basics, you want to have your minions collect iron, stones, and logs so you can continue expanding your town. As your town grows, you also want to lay down additional stockpile areas to increase the efficiency of your workers by cutting down on the walking they have to do to get to the resources they need. Next, I built a hunting cabin, and it does exactly what its name suggests. You get venison and leather is important because you can make coats out of them. They are of course great for winter, your minions won't freeze to death, and on top of that you can also sell them for profit once you build a trading post. As you continue, you'll have to manage your resources by collecting more building materials and food. You'll also want to build more houses whenever you can, until not a single one of your minions are homeless. My next big building project was a forester lodge. This is of course to plant more trees so the forest becomes thicker, healthier, and juicier. Buildings like forester lodge, gatherer's hut, and hunting cabin have influence rings. So a forester lodge will plant trees within the boundary of its influence ring, a hunting cabin will hunt only within its ring, so on and so forth. You'll also want to build a tailor to make clothes and a woodcutter to make firewood from logs. You want to do this before you run out of clothes and firewood that you began with as a starter package. A school is also important because educated workers are more efficient than the uneducated ones. So you want to build a school and then assign a teacher. Roads, by the way, are kinda tricky to lay down. You can check the path your minions take from home to work, then lay down the road by approximating that path, but they don't always follow the road. After some time, I began to build buildings inside the forest where I get my veggies and venison. I figured having a barn, a house, and a small stockpile area would be more efficient than having the minions travel all the way back to the town center to either store food or to bring in resources back to their places of work. In terms of happiness of my minions, it seemed all too easy to manage as I continued to average 4.5 stars out of 5. I believe having enough food, different types of food, and a roof over their heads was enough to keep them happy. I mentioned that because there are buildings which affect happiness such as tavern, church, cemetery, and such. I branched the town out to the south as well by building the usual resource gathering buildings inside an existing forest. More food and leather is always welcomed. Not to mention, I'll eventually run out of trees to chop down near the town center, and likely will have to use a small patch of the forest to grow trees, chop down, grow them again, and so on. At some point, as you run out of tools, you'll need to build a blacksmith building to make additional tools. You'll want to do this before you run out of the tools in stock, of course. Health-wise, my minions were doing really good, but I figured I should be ready for anything unless it's COVID. So I built an herbalist, taking even more space from the forest, but I figured it was well worth it. After that, I built a hospital because I wanted to start accepting nomads. You see, nomads can bring in diseases into town, and you wouldn't want that happening, would you? We all went through 2020 and 2021, that's for sure. I don't need to go through the same thing in a game. I'd also mention that you can just assign a doctor once the hospital is built, and voila! A doctor appears like magic. No education, no interning, just assign and boom, you've got a doctor. To accept nomads, a town hall is a must because you can't accept them without it. That being said, it looks like what attracts nomads is a market. A market, by the way, just like a hunting cabin for example, has an influence ring around it, and it sort of centralizes the distribution of your resources. Anyhow, the prerequisite to getting nomads is the aforementioned buildings, a trading post, and a boarding house for temporary housing. You don't want the nomads mingling with your original settlers as much as possible, that is, initially. I've experienced 2 random events during my 10 seasons of playthrough. One was an outbreak of dysentery, and the other one was a tornado. The outbreak was not much of an outbreak as it only affected 1 minion, and the tornado missed my town and I lucked out. In terms of farming, regular farms that farm potato and pumpkin were straightforward. However, the orchard, I only learned later that it needs 4 years for the trees to mature enough to produce their fruits. That being said, adding fruits and nuts to the diet of your minions I'm sure will improve their health and happiness. I ended up building a graveyard and a market at around year 5. I figured some of my minions could die from accidents, but no one did, so I didn't really get to use up the cemetery. A merchant arrived about a year after building the trading post. I sold lots of venison and some of the goods that I had in excess to pay for the wheat seeds that was valued at 2,500 credits. It was well worth it though, since wheat farming went really well. I should also point out that you can custom order goods from the merchant. That way, when they return, you can buy, for example, logs for 1 credit, turn them into firewood, then sell them for 4 credits when the next merchant arrives. So there's a simple economic system within the game. At year 8, the market got filled to 64% and the town was running very smoothly. I was also very happy that farming in general was seeing great yield as well. The year was 10 when I called it quits. I mean, the town had everything in excess in terms of resources. My minions were healthy with the hospital, herbalist, and a healthy diet. Their happiness was also really high, especially when you factor in that I hadn't built a church or a tavern. Finally, the population also grew from 10 adults and 12 children to 29 adults and 2 students, so by 9. I stopped playing the game before being able to attract a single nomad, but I'm sure they would have appeared in time. In any event, year 10 was the final year. So, what do I think about the game? I think the simplicity is the beauty of this game. There's really not a lot to learn in terms of the game mechanics, but depending on what you are trying to achieve and how you might want to go about that, you can make the process a little more complex. For example, you might want to build a community which relies only on hunting and gathering, like the early humans whom depended on foraging for nutrition. Well, from what I can tell, you can build a sizable kingdom in that very romantic manner that we view the early human societies. Other types of civilizations that you can build, I would say isolationist, so no trading or taking in nomads. Or maybe you can try suppressing knowledge, like trying your hand at building a large town without the education system. North Korea comes to mind. Basically, the game requires for you to have some creativity. That being said, this game isn't for everyone. It's a relaxing game, but that also means it can get boring fairly quickly. It's important to note the open-ended nature of the game. There's no end-game content, nor is there some type of an upgrade system, say improving an existing building to something better. There's also no tech trees, so what you see is what you get. That being said, there's a mod for the game called Colonial Charter. It is said that you get a tech tree and different scenario options for the map. That's probably worth trying, but for me, sadly, after some 6 hours of gameplay, I no longer want to play this game. In conclusion, Banished is a good game that I believe will be enjoyed by only a small percentage of gamers. You see, due to the lack of contents to keep you entertained with new discoveries or achievements, it actually requires for you to supply the imagination of what the daily life might have been like in the olden days. Think back to the times when you were a child. Me, I used to build small towns with Lego sets and play either as a farmer or a knight. I would spend hours fantasizing of the happenings within the town and have a blast. Banished to me is kinda like that. And the problem is, I grew up and no longer enjoy playing with Lego. And that is why I'll be uninstalling it and will likely never play it again. Let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree. I'll see you on the next one. Cross out.